Welcome back to the Anfield Exchange, and today I want to talk about the Luis Diaz situation. So, we all know where we stand. Bayern Munich are interested in Luis Diaz. They've had a bid rejected for him. They're expected to come in and put another bid in. But I want to look at the intentions of Liverpool, the intentions of Luis Diaz, and where realistically we're going to land. Then at the end of it, I might look at some potential targets to replace Luis Diaz if he leaves the club. So, I think the first thing, the most important thing to say is that Luis Diaz, he is 28 years old. His contract expires in 2027, so he's got 2 seasons left. There's a little bit of debate as to what his salary is. There's reports that suggest he's on 55 grand a week. There's reports that suggest he's on 155 grand a week. But what I think screams out the most to me is, regardless of how much money Luis Diaz is on, I think Luis Diaz wants more. Basically, I think that's the reason that he's come out and said that he'd like to leave Liverpool. He wants more money. And look, he's a footballer. His career's short. He's going to be 30 years old when his Liverpool contract expires. So obviously he's 28 years old now. This is a point where footballers tend to get probably the biggest contracts of their career. If not now, a year ago, at most 2. So you can understand Luis Diaz wanting to come out and get that big contract, because I think it's clear that he's not going to get that at Liverpool. The club's already come out and said that they're happy for Luis Diaz to run his contract down, finish 2 years with Liverpool and then leave on a free. At that point, like I say, he's 30 years old. He's not going to have the same opportunities, and he's not going to be able to earn the same money that he will be able to do now. So I think from both points of view, it makes complete sense that Luis Diaz would leave the club. Liverpool's intentions, like I say, Liverpool are very happy with Luis Diaz. They feel that his salary is fair for what we're getting on the pitch from him. He's an integral part to the squad. He was last season when obviously we won the Premier League. He actually had the best season he's had for Liverpool last year as well, under Arne Slot. So I can understand Liverpool's stance on it. Liverpool have got this player tied down. He's got 2 years left on his contract. By the time he's 30 years old, he is one of those players that relies on pace. He looks like he's potentially lost a yard of that over the last year or so. But he relies on pace. So I can see why Liverpool would be happy to keep him for 2 more years and let him leave on a free. He offers more to Liverpool on the pitch than what he does in terms of salaries. When you look at Mo Salah and you look at Van Dijk on higher salaries, and even to a degree Fede Chiesa, who he's come in, he's on, I believe, 150 grand a week. So depending what you believe, he's on the same as Diaz or he's on more than Diaz. And the reality of it is, Luis Diaz has given Liverpool much more than what Fede Chiesa has, and probably will in his, what I believe will be a short time at Liverpool. So from that point of view, and this leads on to the intentions from Luis Diaz, is that I think Luis Diaz is more than fair. He's more than within his rights to ask the club for a pay increase, because he is giving Liverpool a lot on the pitch. Certainly more than what Fede Chiesa has done. I think he's on the same salary as Gravenberch. Now, Gravenberch has had a fantastic season last year, but in terms of the year before that, Ryan Gravenberch came in on 150 grand a week, and he didn't really set the world on fire. Luis Diaz came in, he made an impact straight away. Yes, he's had his injuries, but he seems to have returned to form since then. And like I say, he's had the best season he's had in a Liverpool shirt. The issue you've got is, for me, I think the left wing market is there's not too much quality out there at the minute. Yes, Liverpool have got Gakpo, who I believe will probably be the first team left winger next season. But if you're looking to replace Luis Diaz, I don't believe it's possible without spending big money to bring in a player who is as good as Luis Diaz is right now. You may get that if you go younger and you bring in somebody with more potential, but then it's bedding that player into the team as well. So for me, Luis Diaz is probably one of the best left wingers, probably top 5 best wingers in Europe. And I think that's probably more to do with the lack of quality in that position across European competitions anyway. But yeah, like I say, you're going to struggle to get somebody in of the same quality. Now, Liverpool were obviously asking for a certain price, which I don't think Luis Diaz necessarily agrees with. But again, I understand why they're asking for that price. We believe that Liverpool will be willing to take around 75 million for Luis Diaz. He has got 2 years on his contract. He's 28 years old. Do I think that's a little bit inflated? Yes, but I think there's a reason for it being inflated as well. Because if you look at that price tag, 75 million, Liverpool don't want to lose Luis Diaz, so they hold over cards. If we are to let go of this asset that we want to keep hold of, that we want him to be part of the Liverpool squad for the next couple of seasons, then you're going to have to pay full price for him, full dollar. And I think this is where it sort of falls down, because Luis Diaz has made it perfectly clear that he'd like to leave the club. I think he's made it perfectly clear that he'd like to stay in Europe. Barcelona were shown an initial interest. We all know Barcelona haven't got the finances to meet Liverpool's valuation. Barcelona are now out of the race. That was Luis Diaz's dream move. They are now out of the race. They've just brought in Marcus Rashford on loan with an option to buy. And that option to buy, I think, is around 30 to 40 million. So again, it's the cheaper option for them. There is a potential that Barcelona might come back in next year and not take up the option to buy on Marcus Rashford, at which point they could potentially buy Luis Diaz at a slightly lower value, because he then have 1 year left on his deal. I think 30 to 40 million would probably be a fair price for somebody who only had a year left on his deal. So I'm not convinced that Luis Diaz leaves this summer. It depends how he wants to leave. If Bayern Munich can come in and match the valuation, he has agreed terms. I'm not convinced Bayern Munich will come in and do that. I don't believe that other clubs in Europe believe it's a fair price. You've also got the aspect that the Saudis could come in, and I have no doubt that Liverpool will get the money that they're asking for from the Saudis. The problem with that is Luis Diaz doesn't want to go there. So I think what potentially might happen is that Luis Diaz sticks around for another year. I think he will then leave for Barcelona for around 30-40 million in the summer of next year, where he's then approaching the point where his contract's up for expiry. I think that's a most likely outcome. But look, in terms of if Luis Diaz does leave this summer, I think Liverpool have already expressed that we have the funds to replace him. We've still got a lot of work to do in the transfer market, despite obviously we spent close to 300 million with the likes of Wirtz, Frimpong, Kerkez. Hugo Ekitike is just signed for us now. There's reports for Rodrigo, and I think Rodrigo, look, there's two ways you can look at this Rodrigo one. He would certainly be coming in to replace Luis Diaz if he left. Rodrigo was signed from Real Madrid to play on the left wing pretty much at the same time he brought Vinicius in. He's never really had a look in that position. That is his favoured position. So Real Madrid are going to be asking for between 70 and 80 million for Rodrigo. He's also on about £250,000 a week at Real Madrid. Will Liverpool be happy to pay them wages? I'm not sure. Not for a new signing. Or will Rodrigo have to take a pay cut if he wants it to happen, potentially? I think there's a long way to go on this one. I don't personally think that Rodrigo will sign for Liverpool. But it would certainly be interesting to see him and how he performs in his favoured position as Luis Diaz's replacement. That might be a plan for next year, depending how much game time Rodrigo gets under Xabi Alonso, which, let's be honest, it doesn't look like there's going to be much. But what I will say is there's a World Cup coming up, and Rodrigo is probably going to want to be playing football to ensure that he gets in that World Cup squad. And a move very well could be on the cards to Liverpool or to somebody else as well. He'll want to make sure he's in that Brazilian team again, where Vinicius is keeping him out of his favoured position. So he's going to have to come in. He's going to have to play minutes and show the world what he can do, to make sure he's in that squad. Other potential replacements, and look, I'm going to say the name. It's Anthony Gordon. I'm not sold on Anthony Gordon. I think if you're swapping Luis Diaz for Anthony Gordon, I think you're getting an inferior product. You're getting a younger product who could potentially reach the heights of Luis Diaz. I've not seen enough from him to believe that he can make it to the top levels of the game. Newcastle, obviously negotiations are going to be difficult with them if we were to go for Anthony Gordon, purely because of, I think, the impression we've left in the negotiations for Isak. I think we've maybe sort of burnt some bridges in that Liverpool-Newcastle relationship. But the other aspect of it is Newcastle would need to sell players. We've spent a lot of money. We've what looks like kept hold of Isak for the minute. They are spending money. They put a bid in for 70 million for Ekatike. They've brought Elanga in for 55 million. They still need a centre-back. So they need to find a way to balance them books. And if that is by selling Anthony Gordon next year, or maybe they sell Isak this year, who knows? I think we'll get a better understanding of where Anthony Gordon is as a footballer with the upcoming season and see how Newcastle do and how he performs. I think it'll be vital that he gets some Champions League experience as well, which he will do. So yeah, it could be a completely different conversation going into next summer. But I think those are the two names that are being touted around at the minute, Anthony Gordon and Rodrigo. There's also rumours of a young lad from Lyon, Malik Fofana. Now, I'm not going to claim to have known too much about this player. I watched him against Man United last season in the Europa League, I think it was. And he played well. He played very well. He's 22 years old. I would imagine they could bring him in for a lower fee. I personally, not knowing too much about this guy, if he's on the radar of Edwards and he's on the radar of Richard Hughes, he has something about him. He would fit the Liverpool mould more than the other two, I would say. He's young, we can develop him, we can increase his value, and we can potentially turn him into the player we need. But again, it's all speculation at the minute. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Luis Diaz. But it's definitely an interesting one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think we should let Luis Diaz go? For me personally, I would like to stay, like him to stay for another year. I just don't think the market's out there at the minute to replace him. I know there's talk of Rio Ungamoa potentially playing more minutes this season. I think it's probably too early for him. I know he's played a part in pre-season and he's done very well, to be fair, but I just don't think that's what you can go into the Premier League season with, and Champions League football with Gakpo and Rio Ungamoa. So I think for me personally, you keep Luis Diaz. Obviously, we're going to sell Nunes. Diaz has played as that 9 position before as well, so he's got the versatility. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting summer. Let me know what you guys think about the Luis Diaz situation. I'll see you on the next one.